So right now I basically have 4 layers total. I've got my wireframe at the top of my stack, and I have it set to screen. Then I have my color dodge layer just under that. Like as I mentioned, it's for the really small like hot highlights. And then I have a layer for just the wraps, and then my background layer is just the metal now. Okay, so I'm going to work on these other metal bits, and so I'm just going to sample from. Actually, I'm going to bring my concept up here. Okay, and I'm going to sample from the metal I already have, and I'm just going to start sketching it in. This layer is underneath the wraps, so I don't really have to worry about messing that up too much. And I'm just going to start trying to give it a little bit of form. Just going in with a not completely dark, but a bit of a darker color. I always like to be able to go darker or lighter, so I try not to ever commit to being like pure black is something I try my hardest never to actually hit. Not to mention there's a lot of engines that pure black and pure white really kind of mess up in the engine. They almost act like they clamp. Almost like it's hard to describe it. And so there's 2 things I'm trying to do with the lighting on this. First off, I'm trying to make this feel round from this direction. But then after I get that feeling round, then I'm going to worry about doing lighting for this direction as well. So basically I'm just getting lighter as I go towards the middle. I like that brownish color just right there, so I'm going to try to introduce it. And I'm painting with the wireframe on just so that it's just as a guide. And as I mentioned, I like to just work kind of sketchy. There's another brush I use sometimes. I pretty much use 2 primary brushes. I have a single pixel brush that just is like this that I pretty much use almost all the time. And you know, as I need to get it bigger, I can get it bigger. But it's a hard brush with a fall off. And then the other brush I use quite often is this square brush. I like how it kind of layers on top of itself. Okay. And as I mentioned, I kind of work sketchy. Like it's just something I've always done. I like the little accidents that happen. Like for instance, I'm seeing a little bit of a divot here that I might like enhance and just kind of keep. Okay, now I'm going to blend this. Using the smudge tool. And notice that I kept a couple of these blemishes in there. Again, there's just something I kind of dig about it, so I'm just going to keep them. I kind of like the idea of this piece here being kind of a wide little plane of its own. Okay, and then I'll just take a look at that on my model. Actually, I lost my layers here. 1 second. Okay, so I got it round going from here to here, but now I kind of want to work a bit on this as well. Now, again, this sword is actually going to be held. I flip it upside down. It's going to be held like this. So I want the highlight to be on the inside here, and I want the highlight to be up here, and it get darker as it goes this way. Somebody asked about the square brush. Actually, I made the square brush. There's an artist here who is actually my business partner in OMNOM, named Michael Tarwater, and he had always been using the square brush, and he showed me how to make it. There are a number of tutorials out there. If you look it up for making your own brushes, it was basically just a square shape that we turned into a brush. Okay, let's get this lighting. You know what? I'm actually going to do a projection of that. This is a good spot to use that square brush. I'm actually going to sample from my texture flat, so I want to get it over here to the side. I also like to do a little bit of cross hatching in my texture, just to kind of as a start point, and then I'll smooth. I also have a bounce color. It might be hard to see, but it's in here. I have it over here to the side, so I want to use a bit of that too. I'm also smudging past the boundary of the geo, because I don't want a black line to end up being on that edge. I want it to kind of smooth all the way across. And there's a few of these things I'm going to save for the gloss pass, but do want to kind of establish that plane a little bit more. I'm going to do a little bit of damage here. Be a little spotty with it. Alright, that should be good. Okay. This edge is a little darker than I want it to be, so I'm gonna do a little playing with it. So I actually like the shading I've got going through here. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to come in with my bounce light color and lighten that up just a little bit. I'm going to smudge it all.
In the sky, gazing far into the night, I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true.
I just want to break up this edge a little bit. Make it a little bit more visually interesting, because I feel like looking at the concept, maybe at one point this was a connected circle that got broke. So having a little bit of damage here, I think, would be kind of cool. And again, I'm trying not to get too hot with my highlights because I am going to be doing that that highlight pass later on. Okay. Just gonna try something here.
Gazing far into the night, I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light shine through. If you believe it's true, baby, won't you let the light shine through for you.
Sometimes I gotta just keep in mind what side is actually the shadow side here, highlight side. Again, I like to paint out, bleed everything out away from the wireframe. I've seen people who will only they'll literally do a selection and paint to the edge of the wireframe. You always want to have bleed, and in fact at the very end I'm going to bleed out this texture completely. There's a thing called mip mapping that basically there's multiple sizes of a texture that are stored, and in a game based on the situation or the distance, it'll go down a level in your texture. And if you don't have a bleed, sometimes you will start catching some of this outside colors, and it'll start displaying on your model. So if you ever see a character that looks like it has a big black line down in the middle of his head, but it disappears when it gets close to you, that means that somebody didn't put enough bleed on the middle of the head UVs to be able to catch additional texture when the texture gets smaller. Actually, if y'all want to see how I do my bleed at the end, I have a script that I put together. So what I do is I select my the outside of my UVs, then I select inverse, and I'm going to expand this by just a couple of pixels. Then I'm going to copy everything into a new layer. And what I found is I like to create a new layer just to be on the safe side. Our new document. So I'll just have a new doc that I drag that layer to. And then it's a shame you can't see my layers, because you'll see that the stack just builds and builds and builds and then collapses on itself. But if you watch here, alright, here is the action. So it's running in the background right now, and it will, once it finishes, see that it bled out the texture. And then I'll just run that script a couple of times. So if I were to take that back to my other dock here, okay, you can now see how the textures completely bled into each other. And I turn on wireframe, and now there's a complete bleed. There's a good example right there. Now what the action does, and why it's really funny if you could actually see the layers, how it builds up. But basically it creates a copy of a layer, it goes down a layer and moves that layer 1 pixel to the left. Then it creates a copy of the layer, goes down a layer, moves it to the right, and then top and bottom, and then collapses them, and then repeats it about 10 or 20 times. Now there's other programs like 3D Code actually has an export that does the bleed for you, and there's other. I just always like this one because I feel like I can control exactly what's being bled out by me doing my own selection, and two, I just feel like it's a bit crisper. So I just run my own actions. All right, back to texture. Okay, so what? Oh yeah, I was working on. All right, next. I want to just kind of sketch this out real quick. I'm just sampling some of these colors from this texture real quick. And I'm sorry, I'm just taking a look at it in 3D Code real quick. I had to manually switch back and forth, so I might not always switch over. I often create little palette colors in my empty space, just so it's really easy for me to select them This is my bounce color. This is my darkest color. Actually, I just realized I flipped this, so. And one thing I like to do, you have to imagine this piece is actually, I'm painting it upside down. So this part here is actually going to be the darker part, the underneath side, and this is the top part. So it's going to be lighter on this side and darker on this side. Now, since I'm trying to do a bit more neutral lighting, I'm not going overly dark on one side and overly light on the other. But one thing I would like to do is I will put a dark, just a little dark area right underneath the highlight of this central line. And then I'll smudge and blend that out. It just accentuates that highlight a little bit. And as you can see in the concept, no shape is like perfectly shaped. It's always got a little bit of a damage or a wobble to it. So instead of just doing a perfect spike, even though the UVs are, you can see, very triangular, I decided to like pull out some little nubbin areas, and I'm gonna kind of break this line up a little bit more. So if I come over to 3D coat, it's this area that I'm working on. Okay, I'm gonna do a little projection painting real quick. Just make sure that I can select some of these colors. All right. I'm not going to actually worry about this other side. The way I UV, I usually UV pretty consistent on both sides. So I should be able to just do this side and then mirror it over and then break it up from there. So. And even though this is the underside, I often like to do like a lighter color just to create an edge, but I'm never going to go, I'm not going to put a hot line down there, or not too hot anyway. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just sample one of these mid-tone colors and use it as that highlight of that ledge. Okay, then we're going to, here, I kind of want to, I think I want to bring some of this green into here. just as a transition color from here into this stuff. Okay. I'll worry about this transition a little later. I'm kind of getting a little, need a little bit of a break, so I'm going to just finish up this area, and then I'll probably stop the stream for now, and then we'll just pick it up and finish off everything to tomorrow. So I just want to break this up a little bit. So this is actually pretty interesting. So I can watch the preview of the stream while I'm working, and it's a much smaller version of what I'm actually doing. So it's allowing me to see like what if I'm making the details too small, which I was. So I'm going to make these details a bit bigger. Okay, so I think that's good. Okay, so we got this one side painted. All we have to do is just and then I'm gonna break up this damage. I don't want the same damage on both sides. Okay, so now I've got that detail on both sides here. All I gotta do, I actually have these two spikes in different places in the UVs just to kind of optimize the UVs. And all I'll probably do is just copy this texture into those locations and then do the same thing, kind of break them up again so they're a little bit different from each other. As I mentioned, I still gotta fix this. I think I saw a question about is it missing a piece between here and the sword? I think it is. I was looking, now that you guys said something, let me switch over. Okay, so now that I look at this concept here, this piece here is missing. That's a great thing about working with low poly stuff, hand painted stuff. It's not going to be that hard at all to just go in and add that geo and fix that. I think the reason why I missed it is that looking at this concept, it's a little bit hidden, and right in here it's not really as pronounced, and this is the one that I actually built the model off of. So, okay, so let's take a look at the texture flat real quick. You guys can kind of see where it's heading. Okay, so like I said, I'm probably gonna wrap it up and then we'll finish this off tomorrow. But this is a good time to answer any questions you may have. So if you have questions, just shoot them into the chat and I'll see what I can do about answering them. So yeah, thank you for pointing that piece out, and we'll get that added in there. Okay, so the question was about the brush. Again, I use I use two different brushes primarily. I do use other brushes, you know, if I need to. But the first brush that I do is a single pixel brush. And again, here. Let me see if I can turn on monitor capture. So it might get a little laggy here, but at least you'll get to see the options. So see if that works. Okay, so you can see my layers and stuff now. Let me see if I can get them a little bit more on screen here. Okay, so let's talk about the layers real quick. As I mentioned, I don't like to get a lot of layers, so when I build up layers, like for instance, I've been working on this area, and I just happen to have a couple of extra layers for that stuff. Now that I'm satisfied with it, I'm going to collapse it all down to my basically I just have all my metals on one layer, and then I have the wraps on a separate layer, and then this is the layer that's going to be my final color dodge layer. And again, what that does is it does the highlights. Here, actually, we're not going to keep them, but here I'll paint a little bit on this the wrap, so you can kind of see how what it does is it blows out the colors underneath. And what I do is I fill that layer with black first before I start painting with white. And as you paint with white, it starts highlighting, but then you can see that the more pure white you get, the more it blows out that color that's underneath. So instead of it just being a white highlight, you can actually get the highlight colors of what's underneath to kind of really just see how it's getting warmer and warmer. This is really great for metals because you can get those real hot spots. But I also do it more subtle for things like leather. So I can, let me undo that a little bit. Oh, and you know, and also if you want to get rid of something, just you paint with black to get rid of it too if you get stuck with it. But so I can come in here and start edging, which is what I'm going to do eventually here. And then another thing I could do is, so this is a rod that goes through these wraps. So I actually want to have a little bit of highlights. And again, I'm just going to work sketchy, but I'm going to pretend like it's right there. And then using my smudge tool, I'll blend these out, and I'll have highlights in that area, and it's using the color from underneath to highlight itself. So now if I turn that on and off, you can see that it's kind of got that glossy look over it. The reason why I call it the glazed donut is because I do a lot of these real small pixely things, so as a final pass, you know, just to kind of pop edges. Okay, so the question was about the brushes I use. So the primary brush I use is a single pixel brush, and I would pop it up. Basically, it just has smoothing sets and other dynamics and shape dynamics, and that's pretty much it. These things are set to pin pressure, and then smoothing turned on. But I just do a single pixel. It's, you know, honestly, it's from I started out as a low palette sprite artist, so I was constantly working on like a per pixel level on my art, and so I've always really enjoyed just having a single pixel brush that I kind of just, I can get in there, get real small details, or I can get, you know, scale it up and get a little bigger, what have you. And then the other brush I use is this square brush. And this is a brush that I just made Mike Tarwater here at work showed me how to make it, and honestly I probably don't even remember how to make it. So, but what I like about it is that it builds up onto itself. And we can look at the options for that. And it's got shape dynamics, pin pressure, and it's got other dynamics, pin pressure, and smoothing. So it's basically the same setup. It's just a different shape. Okay. So let me take a look at the questions here. I'm actually going to switch back over to Photoshop non-monitored so that it isn't lagging the stream. Okay. Somebody asked about what kind of stylus I'm using. I am actually using a Cintiq, and I believe this is the 24-inch Century. It's pretty big. Somebody asked, when and how do you consider a piece done, or forever go into polish mode? Honestly, I never consider a piece done. I just kind of stop. It's usually when I'm like, oh, that's good enough to go, or deadline hits and I just have to put the finishing touches on it. But I feel like I could probably noodle on stuff forever. And honestly, I mentioned earlier, that's the reason why I'm trying to get better at jumping all over the canvas more. You know, like the one thing to consider is if you focus all your efforts on detailing one little piece, and then somebody comes in and says, "Oh, deadline's too tight, we gotta stop now." Well, all you actually have completed is one little detail on the piece. Whereas if you jumped around, at least everything is at the same level. And it'll be look a little bit more finished and you know, not glaringly obvious that there's one very, very tight area compared to the rest. Okay, so this question is so where do you see yourself in 5 years? Hopefully OMNOM is making its own little small games. We're very interested in making very little small indie games, something that's very character related. But other than that, we're just going to continue making cool characters for these for awesome projects that you know, give us the opportunity. Is it better to just paint or bump map damage and things to an asset rather than modeling the damage into it? So I think you're kind of talking about two different things. In this case, this is a diffuse only texture, so there's not any normal maps, no spec map, nothing like that. So all of it's going to be painted. I have worked on projects. We've worked on projects like League of Legends, where a lot of the, even though we did diffuse only for those characters, we generated high-res meshes and generated normal AOs and some normal map information to get us started on the textures for those. But at the end of the day, it all came down to just being painted. So you don't really need a bump map or anything for that stuff. Now, if you're doing a full normal map character, which we do as well, then yes, you know, it makes a lot more sense to do that in as high-res information or bump information. It says somebody asked about the color dodge layer. Yeah, so let me now it could be different in newer versions of Photoshop, but in CS3, in order to create a color dodge layer to work the way I just showed you, I just created a brand new layer and I set it to color dodge, and I have no let's see here, color dodge, and I have no black filled in the layer. If I paint with white, you basically just get this effect, even though it's on color dodge. But the magic is if you fill it with black first, the entire layer, and then start painting with white, You see how it starts blowing out the colors underneath. It's a completely different effect. Okay, I'm just trying to read some of the questions here. So yeah, you could also lower the opacity on that layer if you want to have it a little bit more subtle. I think that's what you're asking. Something else that I haven't shown here that somebody's asked about some of the other options. So the thing is, I also use gradient maps a lot to generate some nice colors in the shadows. Like for instance, if I were to, there's a couple of things I would do if I wanted to change the colors of this completely, of this sword here. So let me just copy it into a new layer. Now this is something that they took out of the latest version of, here, I'm just going to select a small section of it. For some reason they took this out of the latest version of Photoshop, and this is the whole reason why I really don't want to upgrade to like the newest versions. But there's a thing called variations, and I love variations. So in CS3 it's under image adjust. Here, let me switch over to monitor capture. Okay, so it's under image adjust, variations, and what I love about this is that you can actually control your shadows, your midtones, your highlights, and your saturation, and you can go fine or coarser. But why I like it more than say HueSat is I really feel like this takes the individual colors of the pixels and shifts those to a certain color. As you're adding more blue or green or red, whereas for me, HueSat tends to just make everything rush to it to be kind of monochromatic. So for instance, if we want to have our shadows to be more blue, kind of purple, I can do that, and then my highlights, I want it to be more of a green. That's kind of the effect I'm able to get right there. So you know, I love variations. Now, the other way you can do something similar to this is I'm going to do a gradient map, and I really don't care what color these are right now. I just need to make sure that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to say, like, let's say we want our highlights to, and I'm going to sample from this. If I wanted to sample directly from this image over here, I'm going to sample my highlight color to be this color here, and then my shadow color, I'm going to, there we go. My shadow color, I'm going to sample from here. So that's a quick way to sample from images or to make adjustments. But now let's say I want it to be more blue, or even purple in the shadows. And you know, I want to play with bringing the greens lower down, and then my highlights, I want it to be say kind of a pink color. So I can do a lot of like adjusting the color through just gradient maps. And I'll usually do, I mentioned earlier that I don't like to go to pure black. I'll do a gradient map a lot of times at the start just to ensure that I don't have any shadows that are pure black. You know, this now has like a color as the deepest shadow, and then it has a it's not quite white. It has like a pinkish tone in the highlights. Somebody asked if we're hiring. We are not hiring right now, but we've been in business for 3 years now, and each of those 3 years we have done an apprentice program. I don't really want to call it an intern program because I really like the idea of apprenticeship, where somebody comes in and learns from the people around them, and so far, we're on our third apprentice right now, but the first year apprentice went on to become full-time employees for us, and so this program has really worked out well for us. And the cool thing about it is they get some real-world experience working on some really fun games out there, like Battle Chasers. We worked on with Blizzard, we worked with Riot. There's a number of studios out there that we've gotten the opportunity to work with, and it's a great way to get experience. But no, we are not hiring right now, but keep an eye out, and we will probably be doing the apprentice program again, say next year. So somebody here has talked to me in League of Legends, and I mentioned this stream, so they're here. Nice to see you here. How do you pick your colors, or do you just pick what looks good to you? So if I have just a black and white concept, then I just kind of work with the colors that look good to me. But in this case, I actually have this awesome painting that was already done that I can sample colors from. So I start from that point. Now, the one thing I always want to do is I like to mix colors in, so you'll notice it's very rare that it's subtle, but this isn't silver. It's got browns and blues and multiple colors in it. Okay, let's see if there's anything else. Somebody mentioned the blend brush. It's actually just smudge, the smudge tool. So again, actually here's something that I like to show people. So let's say we were doing a muscle, a skin, and we have a arm. Here, I'm going to just sketch out an arm real quick. I show this to a lot of people. So if we have like a muscle here, people have always dug the arms I do, so I'm just going to use that as an example. Alright, so this is a quick crummy arm. Alright, so what I see a lot of people, here, let me just fill it, get some color in it. Just going to grab a color here. Okay, and we're just going to, this is not going to be a final product or anything, so we're just going to just darken some shapes. Okay, I mostly just want to show this section here anyway, so then we're just going to blend this. I'm going to show you the biggest mistake that I've seen people do when they're doing skin. And this is a great way to show off the smudge tool, which I use all the time. Okay, so the biggest mistake people make is they feel like they have to outline. I'm going to do this on a new layer. They feel like they have to outline every muscle. So they end up doing, oops. Oh, this is not working. Alright, there it goes. So they'll sit there and they'll have the muscle completely outlined. And you know that's if you think about your skin, that's not what happens. You know, you actually have skin on top of your muscle, not individual muscles. So what you always want to do is you want to, yes, establish a shadow, but then you also want to put a highlight right up against it. So I'll come in here with, say right here, and I'll just put a highlight color right up against this edge, and I'll put a highlight color just right up against this edge. And now when I smudge, when I blend, I'm going to blend away from, there's a boundary between here, the dark part, and the light part, and I want it to be very sharp, so I'm going to blend away from that line and try not to, I don't have, there we go. So I'm going to blend away from that line and not cross that edge. And that shadow side, I'm going to do the same thing. The thing I don't want to keep is a big dark line. I want to have these look like they blend in each other. They meet up against each other, but there's just there's no like big thick. You see how these big thick lines? We don't have any of that. And then the other thing I would say is that you hint at the muscle, but you don't. So yes, I'm going to have it darker at the start. Here, let's just do this. So I'll have it darker here at the start. Say here at the start. But I'll let that line just finish out. And then just have very subtle lighting between the two. It's all about hinting at the muscle being there underneath the skin without actually having to outline it, without actually having to say that, yeah, that muscle is definitely there. Well, you can just kind of hint at it. And by not crossing those lines, you get kind of a nice little crisp spot. And I'm not going to spend the time to make it like completely great or anything, but you can kind of get the idea here. But what really sells it is that 1 pixel, that little 1 pixel highlight that's right up against that shadow. Now you see there's a crisp edge there, and it's darker here, but it terminates, but it still hints that there's muscle there, but now it feels more like skin rather than, say, over here that's still heavily like, oh, I got a dark line all the way around the muscle. But hopefully that shows you the idea behind it, and my blending again, and yeah, so. And that's actual size is that right there. So okay, let's see if there's anything else. So somebody, asked if I have traditional training. I think I mentioned it before, and what is so great about having this opportunity to work with Joe Matt on Battle Chasers, I wanted to be a comic book artist. So all through high school, I did nothing but drawing comic book characters. I was a first Part04 student at our school, and I actually lettered in art, and I got a scholarship to go to the Art Institute of Dallas. Where they kind of taught me something. What I really got from the Art Institute was more the traditional stuff, like the drawing from life, and I really didn't get much of the game stuff from that. And so most of the game stuff, like the texturing and stuff, is just from seeing work, seeing what other people did on Polycount, polycount.com, and some tutorials out there. But it's mostly self-discovery. And just, I at one point before I got into the game industry, I was a teacher, so I think I have that kind of background, that idea of like, oh, I'm going to lock that away and use that as a new rule. I like to come up with rules, and they work out really well for me. Somebody asked if I also have a black and white color dodge layer for skin. I don't. What I sometimes use soft light and overlay with some white to establish some of my shading. But honestly, I love working in color as much as possible, so I try to rush to get to the color stage. And then once I have the color there, then I just kind of do what looks right to me. It's hard to understand. Yeah, somebody said if I would have made an arm like that, I would have done 10 plus layers. Yeah, like I said, I build layers up and then I collapse them. That actually ended up being 3 layers just because I just wanted to maintain some of my... Sometimes I use layers more as experiments so that it kind of, rather than worry about history. If you've ever seen any of my sculpting videos, my mentality is I always want to move forward. I don't like moving back, and I always kind of feel like I can sculpt my way out or paint my way out of issues. And one way I do that is when I'm sculpting, if I'm not sure about something, I create a new layer in ZBrush, and then I'll sculpt that up. And if I like it, then I commit it and then keep going forward. Same with Photoshop. Like if I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do, I create a new layer quick, do it, and then if I like it, I collapse it. Otherwise, I throw it out and do it again. So people ask about the music. We're going to be putting this on YouTube, and anything that is not royalty free, YouTube will mute. So I found a playlist. You know what? I ought to put the playlist here. I'll put the playlist in the chat here. This playlist is all, you know, royalty-free music, and I've been using it for each of my streams. So you know, we haven't been going out to the GDC, but you know, we'd like to start doing it. So I wouldn't know right now, but yeah, you never know. We may be at GDC. Okay, great. Somebody asked about the tablet again. I'm using a Cintiq. A Wacom Cintiq. Okay, so I think that's going to be it for today. Once again, this is the Chaoseater sword. Let me switch over to 3D Code so you can see the model again. So this sword will be is for backers of the Battle Chasers Kickstarter. It's an exclusive sword. Be sure to go check out the Battle Chasers Kickstarter. All the links are below the stream. They could really use your support. It's, as I mentioned multiple times, this is one of my dream projects, and you know, like, you supporting them, you know, it's in a little way supports us. So we would love to have you guys contribute to the Kickstarter, please. And let me just zoom in here. The size of this texture is a 512 by 1024, and you know, like, this is a more finished section here, and I'm going to be working on, like, polishing these areas up, get them tighter. Like, you can see how it gets much rougher down here. I really need to hit this area. Alright, if there's not any more questions, I think I'm going to call it a day, and see you guys tomorrow. We'll probably be streaming again at 2 o'clock Central.